Alright, so the main claim that I'm responding to is that video games have a strong negative influence on child development. The three main claims to support this were that video games cause children to be more aggressive, video games can lead to crime, and video games have a negative impact on learning. So I'm going to show you today that the evidence used to support this claim was not sufficient and that the claim is not true. So if we start off with the first main claim, which was that video games cause children to be more aggressive. Well, to prove this entire claim, only one authority was used. His name was Dr. Rick Newer, who wrote a study done in 2012 that claimed to have shown that violent video games cause people to behave more aggressively. Using this to prove the point is a hasty generalization because it is only one study done on a group of only 70 students. And to put that into perspective, a survey done by the Huffington Post showed that 97% of kids aged 12 to 17 play video games to some extent. So the sample size used of 70 students is not sufficient to use inductive reasoning to prove this claim. And then, the same authority who wrote that study, Dr. Rick Newer from PsychCentral.com, then wrote another study a year later, which was published in the Journal of Youth and Adolescence. And this study said that researchers found that playing video games actually had a very slight calming effect on youth and helped to reduce aggression and bullying behavior. So this shows that he published a new study a year later, disproving his first study. And in addition to that, Eric Payne from Forbes magazine wrote, "No study has conclusively linked violent video games to violent crime or youth violence," and a number have pointed out just the opposite. Which that then goes to the second main point that was used, which was video games can lead to crime. Well, my opponent claimed that video games lead to everyday crime and violence and that we just don't see the relation most of the time. He then gave one example to where a boy shot his grandmother after playing Grand Theft Auto, which is a violent video game. Well, the police report for this incident says that the motive is not known and that the video game causing it was just speculation. This is an attempt at cause-effect reasoning, but is actually a fallacy of false cause because just because he was playing the video game does not mean that's the reason why he killed his grandmother. The correlation between the two is not the same as causation. And to say that the video game caused the shooting is not efficient. In addition to the example not being sufficient to prove that the video games can lead to crime, there are statistics that show that the opposite may be true. According to the FBI, violent crimes such as rape, murder, assault, robbery, and theft have all gone down in recent years, just as video game sales are at an all-time high. Some of the actual numbers, according to procon.org, is that the arrest rate for juvenile murders has fallen 71.9% between 1995 and 2008. The arrest rate for juvenile violent crimes has declined 49.3%, and in the same period, video game sales have more than quadrupled. Now, although other factors may lead to this decrease in crime, it does help to show that it's very hard to connect an increase in video game sales and an increase in crime. So, then moving on to the third main claim, is that video games can lead to a negative impact on learning. The main point of this claim is that children can get addicted to video games, and because of that, they will play video games instead of doing schoolwork, which will lead to them doing poorly in school. Well, the problem with that is that video games are not the actual problem here. What causes the negative impact is children not focusing on schoolwork and instead wasting their time with video games. This is a problem with parental supervision, not the actual video games themselves. This could be the same for any form of entertainment, such as TV, movies, or even sports. They are only distractions if the kids or parents allow them to be distracted. It is not appropriate to blame the video games for this. In fact, there are many reports that show video games are actually beneficial to learning. RateSmartKids.com summarizes these findings from authors Stephen Johnson, professor of education at the University of Wisconsin, Paul G., the Appalachia Education Laboratory, and more by saying that some of the mental skills enhanced by video games include problem solving and logic, planning, logistics, multitasking, quick thinking, reading and math skills, inductive reasoning, memory, concentration, and teamwork. So this all shows that video games may actually have a positive effect on learning if they are used right. So, all of this starting off with how I showed that video games do not cause aggression and may actually help calm kids, to video games, how video games do not lead to crime, and how video games do not have a negative impact on learning, all show that the claim saying that video games negatively affect child development is not true.
Scott, everything was easy to follow. You signposted the advocate's secondary claims clearly. You explained your position on each one. You did a nice analysis of the advocate's evidence and challenged it on both the quality of the evidence and sometimes on the reasoning process that was being used. You didn't just rely on a term to say, well, you know, that's a hasty generalization. You kind of explained why it's a hasty generalization. For example, on that first point, the fact that you gave some statistical information suggesting the number of kids that actually play video games, to put that 70 people in the study into context, I thought helped make your argument a lot stronger there. The transitions between the points were very easy to follow. On the last 2 points, you also present counterclaims that seem to deny the advocate's main point. I didn't see quite the same level of evidence challenge, let's say, on the third point, but I thought that the explanation of the counterclaim that you presented was reasonable. It might have been useful, for instance, to point out that in the past, other things have been blamed for the problems that students face. Like, I mean, you mentioned generically television, for instance, but you know, there's always been some claim that people have made that some cultural change has produced a negative effect on students, whether it's rock and roll music, comic books, television, you know, MTV. There's always a new thing that comes along that suggests that there's a problem. And you did, I thought, you kind of mentioned it in general, but I think you could probably find some examples of that too. All right, thank you.